Okay, record there. Hi, my name is Randy Bongiorno, and I am today's discussion leader for the book Strength-Based Teaching and Learning in Mathematics. Today, we will be focusing on the first 90 pages of the book by Meth McCord. She identified and built on students' mathematical strengths rather than focusing on their deficits. The authors argued that by fostering a positive mindset and recognizing what students do well, teachers can create a more supportive, inclusive, and effective learning environment. These key themes included growth mindset, differentiation and personalization, equity in mathematics, formative assessments, collaborative learning, and student ownership. And now with these, I have two fine gentlemen with me. And if they want to give any.
It's Joey here, I just wanted to go off of the growth mindset, what the text explores with that. So basically with growth mindset, the text explores how fostering a growth mindset in students can help them view challenges as opportunities to learn. I think this is a key aspect when teaching math, because some students might not be able to get it on the first try. And you need to help them and support them, but support them in the right way so that they're not going back and they're going forward. It also states how teachers are encouraged to highlight student successes, however small, to build confidence. No matter how small that student creates that like success and the little step that they are, you need to give them, what's it called? Like support them,
Opportunities.
yeah, opportunities to build that growth.
Mhm.
So you can go on with the next one if you want.
Yeah, so it's Colin Palkowicz. So, I mean, I wanted to hit on the growth mindset just real quick again. Yeah, like I spent like an entire class, forget what class it was, and this was like the main idea of having growth mindset, because if a student doesn't know that they can improve and like get better at something, they're never gonna. So it's like your job as a teacher to just kind of make sure they know that every opportunity, even when they fail and they get it right, they just keep learning. But yeah, that's basically what we're talking about. But for the differentiation and personalization, no two students, no two people are alike. So you're gonna have students that learn differently, and a lot of what this book is hitting on student strengths rather than, you need to hit on those weaknesses to, build on them, but hitting on student strengths, and then you want to differentiate, your lessons towards those student strengths. It's gonna be a lot of, you got extra stuff to do, you can't just, put in a specific lesson and expect all the students to be just as good at it. You got to differentiate, which is what, this book talked about.
Yeah, to go off that, it also like stresses equity in mathematics. Just go off like personalization. I feel like in the text, it also argues, not argues, it urges teachers to ensure all students, regardless of their background, that they have high quality access to math instruction. Teachers are also encouraged to identify the potential in every student. Every student is different. You can't just say one kid that they're not good at this and just let them down. You always have to help them grow no matter what. And I feel like that's also key. And go ahead, Randy.
I want to to join in on that. I've recently in the school that I'm having my reading practicum in. One of the students that I work with, he's someone that he doesn't love math, and he loves his language arts. But that doesn't mean he's a bad math student. I've been in with him with small groups, and I've seen him be able to do the math that, other students are able to. It's just sometimes like he's not motivated because, he doesn't see numbers as like super easy, which like I remember when I was younger, I was a little bit the opposite where it was like I disliked reading because I couldn't understand. It would take me multiple tries to read over a page. Where in math, you give
Same way still.
Yeah,
yeah, you give me a math formula, I can easily plug in some numbers and be able to count the numbers and get an answer, which, it's different for every student. And this book, bases that strength-based teaching and learning where, we want the equity in math where the content is appropriate for the students, but, sometimes a student isn't going to enjoy what is going on.
Yeah. Yeah, so and then carrying that on to the formative assessments. So, like an exit ticket, that's always the first thing that comes to mind when I think of formative assessments, just because I think, you do a lesson And then that's kind of, an exit ticket is kind of the way to determine which students liked it or, were good at it and which students didn't like it. And, that was kind of one of their weaknesses. So I think like an exit ticket is such a perfect way to discover some of those strengths and weaknesses. There's also, the anticipatory sets, which is like you go kind of asking what they already know, and then you kind of identify their own strengths before you get into the lesson.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
go ahead.
you go.
No,
No,
yeah.
I was pretty much done. You
I
go.
think it's perfect because in my one class that I'm in field right now, I am doing more of like a general, like couple weeks worth of lessons on variables, even though this has nothing to do with math, but I gave an exit ticket when we started the whole subject, and I just wanted to get like a sense on what students know what and how many students. And I have two students that are struggling in that class, and they actually knew what was going on and knew what a variable was. And compared to students I thought would excel and knew what a variable was, they put down, I don't know. So to exit tickets and formative assessments just give you a good idea on what students need help, even though you may think that one student with the IEP or whatever needs that extra help, maybe they already have one step forward on that subject. And that comes with math. So that, I think formative assessments are good because you know where to build off of.
All right, so the thought on exit, I want to hear you guys. So we've been in many classrooms, but
Mhm.
and I kind of like how with the Westchester program where we're able to see different types of exit tickets. There's not just one exit ticket. It's not just like,
Yeah.
all right, 3 questions, put it on the board. All right, do it. Well, like there's some classes I've seen, it's technology where they're pulling up onto their iPads and right away the data is going to what they have.
Yeah.
Another one class where recently I've seen where I thought it was interesting, where not with the exit tickets, but to keep data of the students, the teacher has a scanner where the students, if they miss a homework, they scan what they have and they literally say what is their reasoning of why they missed the homework. And the teacher then has the ability to get that data and then send it right to the parents after 3, and it gives the exact wording where she did say the parents are like, yeah, no, that's not the truth. And which like, yeah, so there's different
You kind of back
avenues.
yourself up on that one. 'Cause
Mhm.
if
Yeah.
a parent comes after you and they're like, oh, why isn't my student doing their homework or blah, 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 you have that to back you up. And you can also use that for formative assessments. If they're saying that their student's their kid's not learning, and why is my kid not learning? You can have that information and compare it to the whole class data.
Yeah,
Yeah,
very
it's
true.
getting a lot easier with like all this new technology to, kind of determine what students, struggle with and stuff like that. But, and then collaborative learning was something else I talked about. I think that's my favorite like method for teaching.
Mhm.
I think as for me, when I was a student, I'd be way more comfortable talking to my peers at a table
Yeah.
or person next to me and sharing my thoughts on whatever the teacher asked or like how I solved a math problem or something like that, rather than, saying it out loud where everybody's scared to do that. Nobody wants to get it wrong, but it's also a good way, I think, because not everybody, if you're giving a problem, before you teach them the method, or if you teach them different methods, you can kind of like see how other peers do things, or how the teacher does it differently, and you can kind of learn new ways to maybe solve a certain math problem, or new ways, engage in your reading or stuff like that. And if we're going outside of math class here. And I think that's another good way to identify kind of strengths and weaknesses for the student, like self-identify those.
Yeah, no, I wanted to add on that, and you can always use like the fishbowl activity where you have the students, a small group of students in the middle and the large portion of your class sitting outside, and students have all these invented strategies when it comes to math, and I think it's easier for students to communicate student to student and get that point across, and maybe that invented strategy that student has, the other students will be able to build off that. So I think you can get a couple students that you see where they have different strategies to complete the problem and have them sit in the middle and kind of have that collaborative portion of your class. So maybe that student that's sitting on the outside who doesn't really know what he's doing yet and he doesn't really have a grasp on that, maybe that student-to-student conversation will help them gain that.
I think that definitely helps.
So one specific like book pages that like really get into this like collaborative and like what do we see in students like when it comes to their strength is pages 7 to 9. And one thing I like about the book is how it gives these specifics where it breaks down dispositional, process and practices and content. And it breaks down like different things we should look with students, like when it comes to their preservation, them taking risks, like we need to ask good questions to really get to know the students. When it comes to the content, we need to understand the content and also give correct data to see what the student understands. You know, we don't want to, if the student doesn't understand content, we don't want to give them that content. They're not going to be able to answer. We as teachers then need to break it down and work to the student's strengths and work that way. Any thoughts?
Yeah, no, I also want to hit on that with the processes and practices and stuff like that. I think whatever.
Manipulatives, you're good.
I think they're a key aspect when it comes to math. I like how students, those visual learners and the kinesthetic learners, they get to be able to see what is going on in their head. I'm going to go back to the activity we did in class with the cookies and everything. Just being able to see the 12 cookies divided up into 4 portions, or the 12 cookies divided up into 6 portions. Being able to divide those different cubes into separate little squares, I feel like that helps the students a lot. And just when it comes to like base 10 blocks and stuff like that, I think manipulatives, whatever, come to a
You're good.
they have a key aspect when it comes to that.
Yeah, no, I know I was definitely a visual learner. It's just so much easier seeing it. But there are those kids that do prefer like the equation, like seeing the equation, and they're just better at that.
Like formulas and stuff.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Yeah.
That was not me. But yeah, and it's like there's your students kind of, they have to take ownership. That's kind of what they talk about again in the book. Another thing is taking ownership, and like they have to kind of determine what they do best. As a teacher, you know you have to look out for what they do best, but they have to determine for themselves what works best for them. And then as a teacher, you have to determine what works best for you in that aspect to help them, with their strengths. On page 6 in the book, it had the chart at the top or whatever of the teacher just writing about a student, and it was like horrible review on him, saying that he was terrible or whatever. He never listens. And then they said that they implemented the strength-based teaching and learning. And the next review was like how amazing the student was and how much he's grown and how much, he's able to learn. So it just kind of shows, the effect that the strength-based learning has.
So a next point that I want to talk as discussion leader was, so on page 29, there talks about how statement, underlying belief, and alternative belief. Now today in class on what is today? 9/19. Yes,
Yeah.
9/19. Today in class, I brought this up as a topic where I've had coaches and teachers try to give me compliments for doing good work, but it's like backhanded where it's just like,
Yeah.
I after they gave the compliment or said what they did, it was like, oh, like, I did this because I wanted to, and you're acting like, oh, it's a big deal, and like, oh, like, you didn't do it, like something like that, where it's like, I don't like that. Where on page 29, one of the she's doing the best she can. Well, an underlying belief with that statement is she can't learn more. An alternative belief, like she can learn math, we just need to find an entry point into her learning. There's always different ways that you can word as a teacher, and it's a slippery slope that we're gonna have.
It's very slippery slope. You gotta figure that out. Like I was in class the other day, and I'm trying to tell a student that she's doing well. And it's just hard because you don't want her to give up on that task, and you don't want to give her the answer, but you also want her to know that she's almost there. And it's just tough finding that like middle point of, how are you gonna congratulate this student on their success while also have them, work harder at it.
Yeah, when first we were talking about the growth mindset, that goes back to like you have to have that growth mindset language. Like you said, she's doing the best she can. That's not growth mindset language. That's where your mind is, and it's not going to grow anymore. That's not the type of language you want to use as a teacher. I don't know. An example could be like, like we can't help it or whatever. We can't expect you to do more. Those are all non-growth mindset. A growth mindset would be like, I don't know, she is getting better, and she's capable of obviously doing it. And that's what you want your students to know. You don't want them to think they're incapable of learning something.
Yeah. Also, I want to say like the statement where a student, like they don't not care about what the work is. It's just they don't have that. They just don't have that interest.
And like when a teacher says like, oh, I gave up on this, like she doesn't care about my work, that teacher's not doing a good job. It's the student's behavior that indicates that we need to show her how much we care about her learning, so she cares about what we're teaching. Because if you don't care about that student, she's not going to care about you.
Yeah, I'm gonna have a little fun with this discussion on the fact that as tough as it is to say, like I've had a student, the one where I was observing, and this student, like no matter what I did each day, like this student would always somehow give me a problem. And it was interesting because like I know it probably could be his home life, maybe at a point we chalked it up to the reading level. At a time, students they'll act out because they're not on level and to know the material, and so they don't want to look like down like compared to their peers. They don't want to look like, oh, like I'm not doing what they're able to do. So what they do then is they act out. Well, I remember this one student, it was real tough to work with him because like at times like he was pulling on my like wristband. One time he threatened to stab me with his pencil, and it was like, whoa.
What do you say at that point? That's the tough part. Because in your head, you're like, you kind of want to like laugh it off and be like, oh, like what are you doing?
In that moment, I was like, whoa, like I was shocked. But then at a point, it turned into like, well, because what the words he said that triggered me was oh, like what are you gonna do about it? You upset? Like you said you're gonna do something about it? And I was like, my response to that was try it and see what happens.
I don't think that's the best thing to say. I don't think that's the best thing to say.
Yeah.
But you have to find that like middle point of what do you say?
Yeah.
Keep letting it
No, you
happen.
can't, and you also,
But you don't wanna be
yeah,
like.
you have to have that, you can't say try and see what happens, because next thing you know, you're gonna try it, and then what? do you do?
He actually
Send it
like
to the office.
Yeah.
the students sit me down, and I did get the teacher of the class to be like, I don't think we can work together today.
God.
Yeah, no, it was the student gave a lot of problems, but
And what subject was this?
this was a second grade literature
Okay.
class. Yeah, it was they were really young. That showed me as middle grades that I don't want to do early because
Oh
they
wait,
just-
it was second grade? you said?
it was second grade, so it was one of the EDRs here where most people it's not a field, but I guess the one I chose, like they
Was
turned
that
it up.
Dylan?
No, it was
Oh,
it was like
Riley?
Anderson. It was Riley was one of them, and then it was like this other lady. It was like Siobhan something,
Okay.
and she like it was like a 50-minute ride. It was to Anderson Elementary School, and it was like an all black, like no, I was like the only white like person in
Yeah.
there. It was real interesting. Like
I
it was
think
me.
so, too.
It was me and
Very similar.
Rocky. Rocky was like the only other thing, like it was all like black culture, which I thought was interesting just on the topic of like, when it comes to public school, yeah, like
Yeah.
we now culture, it's like everyone, we want to endorse every like history. And with that school, it was like the opposite, where it was like they were really keeping it inner Philly, which like it was trying to like branch out, make that area nicer, but
Yeah,
like
that's the
it's a
tough part,
tough.
because you have to find that differentiation when you're teaching those kids, because,
Mhm.
you know, you gotta find what they're interested in, and their interests are not the same interests that we have. And their cultures are different. You have to kind of find what that culture is, and, it's hard with math, because math is very number-like.
Yeah, it's hard to
you
incorporate
got-
your cultures
yeah.
into math.
Yeah,
Mm.
exactly.
Yeah, that's what the culturally responsive teaching, like I've heard that in like tons of classes. It's not like it's like a simple, it sounds like pretty simple, but it's not, especially like it's easier in like reading. You can give them books, about,
Yeah.
the culture, history, you can kind of focus on historical aspects relating to their culture, but in math, it's a lot harder. So I think this book probably talks more about it later on in the book, and hopefully it gives more ideas on how we could do that. But yeah. But also I wanted to talk about like the students. When I was in field, I had a student, we had just learned a certain way to solve a problem. I forget what it was specifically. This was like a year ago. So, but she was solving it a different way. And I was looking at her and she got the right answer. I don't want to tell her it was wrong, because it wasn't, it was right, but that wasn't the way we learned. So I was like, and we were the teachers, like she was just like progressively making her way towards showing all the different ways. And we just hadn't gotten there yet. So I didn't want to shoot her confidence, but like, I had to tell her like, oh, but like, you have to do it like this way. And eventually she learned it. So like, that's just like this whole thing about students' confidence. You don't want to say, oh, like, don't do it that way. Like, that's not the way to do it. You kind of want to just let them know that like, they're doing, like, what they're doing is good, but maybe try it this way, instead, and see, that's how you kind of figure out some of their strengths.
That's a tough part with like curriculum changes. I know I heard all the time where it's like parents of our generation, like they struggled when we would come back home and the math, like they changed the way that it was solved. And it's interesting now the way how teaching has turned to we're open to any way. Like it's not just like we with the growth mindset, we're not just like, oh, it has to be this specific way, like how you experience, like, and that is tough where, we come in with a lesson plan, we want to go, part one, part two, part
It's never
three.
gonna go the way that you want it to.
And-
It's what you
Yeah,
kind of have to
exactly.
adapt to.
Yeah.
Like you can't go into the classroom with like a script of exactly what you're gonna say, like after each thing. It's never gonna go that way. And that's another thing I have to say about the WC lesson plan template, but we're not gonna go into it.
Oh no, go in there.
Yeah,
We got
I don't
10
think
minutes.
she doesn't like you either.
She's probably interested here. Go in there. Come
No,
on, guys.
I don't like the lesson plan template because it's very scriptural.
Yeah.
Like,
It's like 9 pages that I got for my lesson plan coming up.
That's
Who's reading that?
And yeah, exactly. You're not gonna go into classroom like a robot and
And
say,
yeah.
hello, students, today we are going to learn fractions.
You wanna make
Yeah.
it.
Like you want to make it like
Fun.
your own, like you want to
Yeah.
have that teacher. And I want to loop back to strength-based teaching and stuff like that. And how with technology and everything, like I want to incorporate technology into these lesson plans, this and that. But these lesson plans are so outdated that technology doesn't really have like a play in these. And technology is so crucial in these classrooms, and that will support the students that need that help, because a lot of students nowadays that are in this generation, technology is they're smarter than we are with technology. And hold on one second.
Oh, good. Take
Where was I? I don't know where.
I mean, I can just like say something while you're.
Yeah,
while
go
you're-
in, go
I
in.
like, that's kind of what she went over today, right, with the 3 acts, rather than she didn't give us a template, she gave us a template, but it wasn't like the WCU.
Exactly. It
Template,
keeps you
she
on
gave us
track.
Act
Yeah.
1, Act 2, Act 3, just like questions that we're gonna ask, things to have them doing while we're reading the book. It's not like, okay, your anticipatory set, you're this set, all the stuff you're gonna do. It wasn't like that, which I'm the same way as you.
Yeah.
I don't think that's necessary.
Yeah, exactly. Hold on one second.
Yeah, go
right?
in.
I also like how the Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, it gives you a time frame. You're from, I don't know, 10 to 10:15. You have that
Mhm.
introduction. You want to spend time on that introduction. You want to fly through that introduction. You don't want kids to think, oh, we're here to do this. All right, let's start learning it. You want them to like get a feel on your kids, how they're learning, what's going on, this and that. And then it
Yeah.
goes to like Act 2 and Act 3. It's kind of like a conclusion. Then you can kind of test and use that formative assessment and test that kid's knowledge to see if they got the point that you're trying to get across. And you can also use that with technology too.
Yeah, so I'm gonna come in with the point that so over the summer I worked for a pool business, and one thing with the pools is I as a kid I was never hands-on. So every summer I go from teaching to pools where I'm hands-on. I'm working with screwdrivers, I'm working with drills, I'm working with nuts, bolts. There's so many different things where at times I'm like, dang, I really have no experience, and I go into these pools and I'm like, darn, like I really don't know what's going on, so I have to be explained and learn the process. Well, halfway through these summers, I'm going to these pools and I'm like, boom, I know to do this and that.
Yeah.
Bam, we're done, we're out of there, made some money. Well, when it comes to teaching, the nice thing about lesson planning is that as a teacher, like we don't know the specifics, the wordings, like anticipatory set, all that. And so the thing about lesson plan, it is nice that even though it can be a pain, especially with all the stuff, and especially with how lessons don't go from step 1 to step 3 like perfectly, it is nice that it breaks it down. And as newbies, like, because we go into these classrooms, almost every teacher I've experienced when it comes to observing, none of them do lesson planning, but that's because they went through the college,
Yeah.
they did learn all the specifics that they can go, and they have that experience they can just go off the
Yeah,
rails and do
yeah,
what they gotta
yeah.
do.
Yeah. So I think we should come back and kind of come back to
Yeah,
the
back-
strength-based thing and strength-based.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
learning
book.
Instead of going off on a tangent here.
Yeah, well, I had, oh, you can go,
All right, no, I was just gonna say, I read this in the book and I just want to say, students' voices matter. Encouraging students to share their thinking allows you as a teacher to get a better understanding and just encourage students to talk and, you know, how they're feeling about it, what they're thinking right now, this and that. You're able to teach students more efficiently when it comes to that. You know, and it provides a platform for students to learn from one another. And I just think that's a key point, and I just wanted to say that because I had that in my notes.
Yeah, that kind of goes back to the whole collaboration thing, not just like showing them how to do something, having them do it, moving on, because now they know it. No, you gotta make sure it's drilled in there, you gotta make sure they do it multiple times, you gotta make sure they talk about different ways to do it, you talk to their peers and stuff like that. I mean, also, I wanted to hit on what you were saying about the how you worked at, the pool thing or whatever, and you didn't know how to do these things, and like you said halfway through the summer, you like knew how to do it like that. And that's kind of what it talks about as not just hitting on strengths, because that wasn't one of your strengths probably at the
Mhm.
time. You want to hit on the weaknesses too, and you want to make those weaknesses eventually turn into strengths. So yes, strength-based teaching is like really good way to do it. Obviously if they're playing to their strengths, they're gonna do good. But you want to make sure that you're still hitting on those weaknesses and improving on those so that, later down the line, they're not weaknesses anymore.
Exactly, I agree with that, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, no, because you wouldn't have that ability to go out there and do this and that, and then when it comes to the classroom. You know, kids are gonna come in with all weaknesses, and hopefully by the end of the semester, those are all gonna be turned, but how are you gonna turn them into strengths? And I feel like that's why we're also in this class, because how are you gonna take that weakness and how are you gonna like, I don't know, well,
Shift it, turn it.
yeah, how are you gonna
shift
shift
it,
that? Yeah, how are you gonna shift that? And what ways are you going to do that? And I don't know, I'm excited to learn that this semester.
So a question that I brought that probably is going to be our finisher is how can technology be used to support a strength-based approach in math education? I'll start us off with a little what I've seen in a classroom where at times my teacher would do group work and they would lose motivation and be struggling with the math. Well, all sometimes you need is a little bit of a reward. Sometimes we don't talk
Mhm.
about the reward system. My teacher, she has this dojo rewards where all the rewards, all 10 of them, different point system, none of them are like the teacher has to spend no money on them. All of it's free, like it's get an eraser, get to work outside of the classroom, have a movie lunch break. Well, that's something where like the dojo rewards, it would turn them from not motivating to her be like, all right, well, 2 dojo rewards for when you're done. All of a sudden you just see in the eyes
Yeah.
the kids,
Yeah.
it's like they
Yeah, it's
love
funny
that.
because those little things that we as 21-year-olds don't see that like as rewards, like an eraser,
Yeah, they love that.
go outside. Like these kids, like they
love
want to work towards something, you know.
Yeah.
And you're not just gonna work at something because what's gonna be the final product? You're not gonna get anything out of doing a worksheet. You know, they're not seeing that. Even though they're learning doing it, they're gonna see, oh, what am I doing? This is stupid.
Sometimes when it's not a strength, giving that reward it'll allow the student to step outside of their comfort
Yeah.
zone, trying to get something that they
Yep.
want.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
something that's important.
There's a word for that. I learned it in one of my EDR classes. It's like some sort of conditioning when they know they're gonna get a reward for something. If they're doing it good, they're more inclined to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was just, I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's definitely a huge part, especially in today's classrooms,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also at the same point, you kind of see the negative effect of that because you don't want those kids that
Just to
know
do-
they're
They won't do anything if they're
Yeah.
like, all right, what's the
And,
point?
you know, the kids that also that they know they're not going to be get done first. They're not smart, quote unquote smart, or they don't process it
Hasn't been
enough.
yeah.
So there can be a downside of that because you can have a kid that can be doing it fast. But how is that kid in the lower part of the totem pole learning?
Mhm.
If that
Yeah,
kid
because
is
they know they're
just-
not gonna, they're not
Exactly.
really trying.
How are they gonna try? Because they know they're not quote unquote smart enough to get to the top.
Yeah.
True.
So that's where you have to build that strength in that student to be able to do that. But I guess we'll
We'll learn more about that
learn
in the
more
rest of
about
the
that.
book.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
good with both of you? So I could wrap
Yeah.
this up?
Yeah,
All right,
good.
so I was Randy Bongiorno as discussion leader for meeting 1.
I'm Joey Horan.
That was
Colin Balkovic.
Yeah, those were our 2 group members. And thank you so much for listening to our first podcast meeting. Thank you.
Uh,
It's canceled.